Alright, guys. Top 10 most fun units of all time. Let's not waste any time. Number 10 is LR Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably a very controversial take. And the reason it's super controversial is because I think a lot of people would have him much, much higher. I think this is a very fun unit. This is a very popular unit. It's very hype, obviously. Dokkan Fest LR fusing Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta into Gogeta. And his kit was very fun. I mean, everybody loves additional supers. Everybody loves, super effective against all types, counters, active skill, transforming. But I think the issue is that in reality, in all of the fights, or I guess just the two main fights that everybody was bringing these units into, this unit was not very fun to use. This unit was not designed for those fights. I think they did a bad job of designing these units for the difficult fights of the 7th anniversary. And I think if you look at my next unit, I think it very much shows my opinion on how fun it was to use these units versus Red Zone Broly and Omega. I think a bit of the issue with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta versus the gods is the typing, because technically, versus Broly, both of these units did not have good matchups. Their main defensive mechanic after transforming was, essentially dodging. Back when these units dropped, you couldn't the counter didn't count as a nullification, and so the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta couldn't counter Broly's AoE supers or his last phase double supers. And this unit, the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta unit, also suffered from typing because the Omega fight, which people pretend that this unit was very good in reality, this unit struggled a lot because the first phase was int, and then the second phase was immediately STR, and so this unit really, 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 really wanted you to transform as quickly as possible, because past your first turn you didn't have the guard anymore. And I think they kept, if you use the units now, they sort of kept the spirit of the units intact, except they made the units so much less reliant on stacking because they're just way better after transforming. The EZA 7th anniversary LRs are so much better after transforming than the pre-EZA units were on release. And I think if you look at a lot of videos back then, a lot of critiques of the way people were using the units, people would often say, oh, just stack more with the units before you transform with them. But the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta unit versus that Omega fight, you were second phase right into a boss that could just flat out kill this unit without their guard. And so it was very bad to not be transformed, was very detrimental to the team. And I think that definitely led me to bump these units quite a few spots down. I think they would be very high, very, very high if that wasn't the case. And it's like they gave these units the 10th anniversary LR treatments within their own celebration, where over time they just dropped content for the 10th anniversary LRs during the GDC that was bad for them, but they just dropped content that was bad for these units right away. I think the LR gods were a little bit more fun to use on release, and it was entirely because of Tech God Goku having a good linking partner that is slot 1 versus the hardest fight in the game, that's on your 200. Oh, I don't think he wasn't on the 200%, but he was on the 170. And him also being a rainbow orb changer. If you know these units' passives, they got crit, and this unit got dodge. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta got damage reduction. It just led to this unit's team functioning way better versus Broly. And I think Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is a more fun unit. He was not more fun to use. Like, having counters was more fun than this unit's having dodge. But I think it was just flat out not enjoyable to use, or not flat out not enjoyable, but very difficult to use these units versus Broly. Broly, you want to transform as quickly as possible versus that AoE phase. Sin made you want to transform versus him because you don't want to get slammed by that type disadvantage on Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. And I think this unit's typing plus Tech God Goku made the gods function. It made them a little less frustrating to use, in my opinion. Moving on to number 8, This unit was so fun to use on Easy A. On release, I can't lie, I felt that they were a little middling. They were okay. They were solid. They were strong, but they didn't have like access to their full kit. They didn't just have rainbow orbs out of the ass. Like they didn't have a bunch of rainbow orbs. They weren't just doing a bunch of supers. Whereas I feel like after this unit Easy Aid, it just felt like they lived at 24 key. They lived with 5 super attacks. They were constantly doing everything with these guaranteed crits, and it was just like them making their own orbs was just so like it's fun. That is a fun thing to have on a unit that can super a million times. You know, having 3 additionals that have a high chance of becoming a super attack. And I think it's also era dependent. I think you have to look at the era that a unit drops in when it comes to additional super attacks, because you know some units it's like 1 additional super attack guaranteed is like crazy, and that's like, oh my god, back in the day that was like crazy, and that's like super cool and fun. Like you look at LR Gohan and Goten, like they did 1 additional with a medium chance to become a super attack, and it was like, oh my god, their additional supers, their damage is crazy, they're so good. But like in this, I think in this era, 3 additionals, or the chance to do 3 additionals, making your own orbs to give it to you, it just made this unit flow very fun in a very fun way. And I was using this unit on release during the 9th anniversary. It was very enjoyable on Superhero. Okay, this is definitely my most controversial one that I have on here, and you're probably wondering why I have Tech Super Trunks with a big red X on the Int Gotenks slide. And it's going to take a lot of explaining, but I just want to say you had to be there and you had to pull this unit on release to know how fun he was to use. And I think the main way I can explain why this unit was fun is because of the difference between him and Tech Super Trunks. Tech Super Trunks versus Int Gotenks, it's like they are both units that have tall tasks. Like you have to get transform into their state that's just so godly good. It is a tall task. It's not just something you do and you're just getting 100% of the time. But I think the way it's handled with Int Gotenks on release made it so that, you know, some characters, you know, they're like Dokkan Fest LRs and you expect more of them. But for a Golden Week TUR, I think just as a Dokkan Fest TUR, Int Gotenks, I think he was just so fun to use because he had this form where it's just like, okay, he's God. Like on release, back in 2020, you hit Super Saiyan 3 and he is God. Like he is crazy. He is ridiculous. He is like a top 3 unit in the game, like best unit in the game, some people would say back then. And it's like, but you know, Tech Super Trunks was kind of the same way, where he was crazy ridiculous if you hit this tall task transformation, do all his attacks, reach it, you know. But the difference between them is that in base, Int Gotenks wasn't like anything special. He wasn't trying to be anything special. He didn't have crazy offensive mechanics. He didn't have anything that, you know, tried to make him something crazy. He didn't need any of that. He was just super basic. He had good defense on his super attack effect, which back then was not like super, you know, everybody didn't just get greatly raised defense for one turn back then. So in Gotenks, him in a super battle road era, just starting and just transforming on his second turn and getting the stuns and the additional supers, and him being a just solid defensive unit, he was providing everything to your team that you could kind of want back then, minus like the damage, which was fine because it's like, eventually you go into this Super Saiyan 3 form and it's like, okay, you're, you know, slanging it. You know, it's like, that's the issue with Tech Super Trunks, isn't that he wasn't strong enough after transformation. It was that in base, he was just like almost, they tried to make his kit do too much. They added too many restrictions when they should have just made him super basic. I think if you just remove every offensive ability, all the attack from Tech Super Trunks' kit before he transforms and put it into just defense, you kind of have the feeling that using in Gotenks on release was back in, the meta that he dropped in. And I think it was also very fun that, and maybe this is a little biased, but this unit dropped and was a fusion and was in 2020, so you could just use him next to the blue fusions, and I think that added a significant amount of fun to just using this unit. And I think this is almost one of those you had to be there kind of moments where if you weren't there and you weren't using the unit, you probably won't understand what I mean by how good he was and how fun he was. Because he was definitely, he wasn't like a great, like, oh my god, he's so crazy good on release, unless you were in Super Saiyan 3. But I think that this is my hot take, but I'll stand on it. He was very fun, and I think the Tech Super Trunks could have been him if he didn't have the restrictions, or he wasn't trying to be something that they, that they shouldn't have even intended for him to be pre-transformation. Next is the LR Family Kamehameha. This is a pretty recent unit compared to some of the picks on here, and I think it's, said easily enough with the text on screen. You just blow the enemy away. Like, it's so fun, it's so free, it's so enjoyable just to, this unit on release, you transform it to their standby state and they're nigh invincible on their second turn, and then their next turn or the turn after you could, stay in it. They just blow the enemy away. Like the hardest fight in the game, Goku and Frieza, just one hit, just blasted, obliterated. And that was so fun. Like, you cannot understate how fun it was to hop into the most difficult stage in the game and to get to see every part of a unit, get to see them in base, transformed, standbyed, orb changing. You fulfill their little quest that they have, and they just blast the enemy with this beautiful animation. They just had little to no restrictions. They had the super class restriction for their defense while they're in standby, and they just their standby condition is just their second turn. And I think that this unit was essentially the 8th anniversary LRs with all of their restrictions removed. Like, no if ands, no asking you to do, hop 3 times on one foot the way the 8th anniversary LRs do. And it was just so fun because it didn't feel like you were just like overkilling the boss. Like, sometimes units drop and they're just too good for their meta, like with I think a lot of 9th anniversary, like that year, a lot of characters were just too good and the content wasn't difficult enough to where you were like overkilling the boss. You were overcooking. Like, you just had too much damage and the bosses couldn't hang in there. And I think that this unit was like a perfect balance of like, you got to see every part of the unit and you got to use all of the units on your team. But at the end, you just like blasted the enemy and just one-shot them. And that is so fun. You cannot understate how fun it is just to see 99.99999 just pop up on the screen, and the most difficult phase in the game is just blown to bits. Okay, next one. I think this is pretty important. This image is, not the best quality, but this one is kind of the inspiration to make this because he is obviously one of the most recent LRs, and this unit is very, very fun. I have a little diss on here. Good key, unlike that other Diamond LR. I wouldn't say it's the mark of a good LR that they have good key, because you can have bad key and be a good LR easily. It's more the mark of an LR that is enjoyable to use. Like, it's not fun to see your units in big 2026 sitting on low key amounts. Like, that's not very fun. That's not very enjoyable. No one really enjoys that. And like I was talking about with additional supers, back in the day, you could do less and it felt like more because of, the way the metas work, the way gachas work with advancing power creep. And this unit is the perfect unit because he is doing more and it doesn't feel bad. So many units drop nowadays and they're just additional attack that has this and this chance to be a super attack, and it's very boring. Me personally, I've gotten So sick of it. I hate seeing additional normals. I don't want to see them anymore. They're miserable. They're terrible. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. And so I just want the unit to be like Ma Junior, where they do the super attack or they don't. I know it's technically better for the hidden potential to activate if they do the additional normal, but it doesn't give you the same enjoyment just to see a bunch of normals. I don't want to see my failed procs. I just want to get the procs. You know what I mean? It's not very enjoyable to see the additional normals, and this character isn't doing that. He's doing super attacks. All his attacks are super attacks or they're not. But he also has that extra, still he's doing the super attacks, but there's still that little RNG game that's still super enjoyable, and what people enjoyed, in earlier times, and enjoyed before, about the additional being a chance. Oh, is it going to be a super? Is it not going to be super? With this one, he's doing the super. You're getting the super. It's enjoyable. Let's go, the super. But there's still a chance that you get that extra dopamine rush. It just hits your brain I don't even know. I can't even describe it. It's just it's so fun to see the EX supers pop up, and I really think that this unit is such a fun unit just because of, doing all these additional supers. You're building your attack with every super attack. It's just, you're seeing big numbers just pop up, and then you get that extra little noise and a cool animation plays and a voice line when you hit and you're supporting and doing more. It is very, very enjoyable, and I think that this is the only unit to use EX super attacks in an innovative way, unfortunately, and I really hope that they do more like this, and I really wish that I really hope that they just decide that they want to give characters that easy EX super attacks. I know they won't, but some of these units, I just can't imagine them being fun, that do 50 additionals that have chances to be super attacks. Because on release, back a long time ago, it's that's super fun, all these characters doing these additionals that have a chance to be super attacks. But power creep has kind of hit, and now it's kind of stale. I no one really wants to see the normal attacks. I feel if they added normal attack animations or normal attack effects, it would be much more fun, and it would be much more enjoyable just to get the normal, because it still feels like you get something. But I don't know if they're ever going to do that. And I think EX super attacks, having an additional super that has a chance to be an EX super attack, is the perfect next step in those, the evolution of additionals that have a chance to be a super attack. Okay, next unit is very popular, LR Gogeta Blue. Now, I'm kind of basing this with this unit on release, because this unit, the 5th anniversary LRs, they aged probably the quickest of any anniversary LRs ever have, because they dropped, and then Sanday dropped with Extreme Super Battle Road, and it was almost designed for these units to just suck in, which was very unfortunate. Of course, you could run them in slot 3, and I believe pre-EZA it was 50% chance to dodge in slot 3, which just it wasn't very fun. It wasn't very enjoyable. That's not having to float off your new Dokkan Fest at large STR Gogeta Blue was not very enjoyable. But on release, using these units, it was euphoric. It was immaculate. This unit was very, very fun to use. It's just beautiful animations. You get to start as Gogeta. I cannot state this enough. Nobody cares about base Goku and Vegeta and Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta. It's an intermediate phase. You just don't want to see it. Nobody wants to see any of that. Nobody does. It's not very fun. It's not enjoyable. We want to use Gogeta, and with this unit, you just started as Gogeta, and he dropped alongside Vegito, and you start as Vegito, and both of them were on each other's teams with all these other fusions, and it was so enjoyable. And I love units that build up. Are some of the most beloved units. Maybe they're not the best in hindsight, but they're just some of the most beloved units in Dokkan history, and for good reason, because seeing the numbers rise and rise and rise and rise is just very, very enjoyable. I think this unit was the epitome of that, because it's build up plus Gogeta, and you get a transformation every single time you use it, and it wasn't difficult to transform, but you were just, it was fine that you were starting not as, you know, Gogeta Blue, because you just go right into him. It was a quick transformation. It's like with the Family Kamehameha, you don't like have to wait. And I guess it's the same thing with the 7th anniversary LRs, except there's a bit of nuance to there where you kind of don't want to transform or fuse depending on what unit you're using, and it's like the fight, and you know, it's like it's kind of unenjoyable because you don't get to stack, and you know, you don't get to build up if you transform it. There was some nuance to it, and I feel like this unit just didn't have it. Like, you just, they, you know, it's not an active skill. You just transform and they just start building up and they just punch shit really hard, and it was very fun. This one, Easy A Physical VB. This is one of those units that just, when this unit Easy A'd, he was so good. This unit dropped in his Easy A. It was like only like 40% attack and defense at the start of turn. Like, that was like I'm pretty sure that's like almost everything he got. And it's just like, back then with the Easy A stats, like, that was enough. By the way, look at this guy's card art. It's so good. Such a good card art. We need a new VB. But like I was saying, just this unit doing all those additional supers. He can do 2 additional supers, which back then, you know, it's like I say with the like, it depends on what era you're in, whether or not, and 2 additional supers is very fun or not. Right now, it's like, you know, my grandma does that, but back then, it's like 2 additional supers. Oh my god, he can do 4 supers total, and he's, you know, he's greatly raising attack and defense one turn. You know, like I said, back then, that's like, oh my god, and, you know, right now, yeah, whatever. But doing 2 additional supers on a unit that greatly raises attack and defense was a solid defensive unit. He had an immaculate key set, or immaculate link set, and he just worked with everyone. He had counters. Counters are very, very fun. I don't have a lot of counter units on here, but it's just mostly because I feel like the counters are very restricted. Units that get counters, like in, you know, Vegeta, like in the LR Dokkan Fest LR, Goku Vegeta 3rd anniversary LR. That in Vegeta unit is just 6 turns below 50% HP. Like, that's so boring. That's not fun. It wasn't fun to use that unit because of that, in my opinion. But, you know, the crit counters on this unit, you're just starting with counters and additional supers, and he's Vegeta Blue turn 1, and it's just, he was, you know, so dominant. He actually was the best TUR on release. You know, I feel like he was a lot better. Back then, people did not really ever discuss normal TURs with Easy A TURs, and so the discussions were kind of, you know, Tech Ultimate Gohan versus in Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, but this unit was, in reality, I think, better than both. Like, he was really, really crazy on release. The damage he did, he was a good defensive unit. The crit counters are basically what the EX super attacks feel like, except, you know, imagine that back in, what was it, 2020? This might be a 2020 Easy A or 2021. It definitely, I believe it was a late 2020 Easy A, because he was definitely around at the same time as in Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. But yeah, definitely crit counters, additional supers, just good stats. Everything he had, he was right away. Very fun. Okay, this unit. This is definitely one of the most fun units ever. And I think I definitely have to have this unit above LR STR Gogeta Blue. And it's solely because of the difference in the abilities they gave him. I just say it right here. Additional super attack over the effective against all types that Gogeta had made him a bit more fun. I think just having a guaranteed additional super attack in this era was like, oh my god, like, what the heck, you know? It's like, obviously, like, Kale and Khalifa were around, but even theirs was restricted, you know, Pure Saiyans, Universal Power Saga. But this was different. This was Vegito. You start as Vegito, you go into Vegito Blue, and he does a guaranteed additional super, and it's like, wow, what the fuck, how? That's crazy. You know, he's building up. Everything that made Gogeta Blue fun, I think, made this unit fun, except I don't have it on here, but this unit also had a teeny tiny bit better leader skill. They were both final trump card leaders, except this unit was final trump card / Patara, and Gogeta was Final Trump Card / Fusion, and there were really zero units on Fusion that weren't already on Final Trump Card, and I think that definitely made this unit's leader skill a bit more fun. You could run a support unit like back then, Supreme Kai of Time. Supreme Kai of Time. Forget her name, but you could run a support unit like that who's giving crit support, all this extra support, was a solid defensive unit, raising I think it was it a massively raised? I know after EZA it definitely was, but it just, this unit I think is just, he's LR STR Gogeta Blue, but instead of effective against all types, he has an additional super. And I guess it's instead of effective against all types and an additional normal, he has an additional super attack, which I think made this unit a lot more fun than Gogeta, in my opinion. And number one, I think people can guess it based on my opinion on additional supers, and I think back then it was Unk status, back then it was much more fun to have additionals. LRSTR Cooler, he's holding up the one, he knows he's number one. This was the most fun release ever by a mile. I think this is definitely this was the apex of Dokkan back then. I think they have never released a unit like this unit. Like, I think Omega is, in terms of like the villain boss, like carrying all the villains on his back. I think Omega does that. Obviously, we talked about the Family Kamehameha having just that ridiculous active skill. Some units have been marketed decently, but this unit just he shouldn't have been as hype as he was. Like, when he dropped, he really should not have been like a top tier hype Dokkan Fest LR headlining worldwide download celebration type of character. I feel like Cooler alone should not have been able to do it. But it's like when the bees, they just they shouldn't be able to fly. They defies the laws of physics, but they literally just ignore it and try harder, and they fly anyway. And it's like, that's what fucking they did with Cooler, is he just ignores all that shit, and they gave him the best marketing ever. Everybody remembers the Cooler rap, and it's just like, this unit blew that out of the water. He was so fun to use. I think the biggest criticism you could have of this unit is that his team was definitely they gave him a good team, and everyone can agree that they gave him a lot of units to use alongside him, but two of the biggest options that they gave you on his team were premium releases around his time. Like, one of them was the LR Metal Cooler, and the other one is LR Golden Frieza, and it's like they drop a yellow coin LR right before worldwide download celebration. That is like the most important piece to using this unit and to using his team, and that's miserable. Like, that's awful. Like, no one enjoyed that. No one wanted that. No one had that unit if you're not like a whale or just a big Frieza fan. And even then, it's like you had to summon right before worldwide, before the unit himself dropped, before even knowing for certain that this was what's coming. And it that sucks. That definitely is a bad feeling. And the LR, him being a villain, villains usually need help. The LR Carnival Metal Cooler in Part 2 helped a bit, but it was still come on, man, two of the biggest pieces to this unit's team were premium releases that released right around this character. It's it definitely made it a bit difficult to build his team, but they did a decent job with the STR TUR Cooler EZA, and I think this unit just, I don't know, maybe back then I got, me personally, I was getting, if he wasn't supering with two or three additional supers every single turn, I was it was rare. That was, for me, this unit just he's hammering the supers, hammering the crits, and it was just wow. It was the most fun I've ever had using any unit in Dokkan ever, and I think this unit just, he takes the cake. The design, the marketing, the animations, the active skill, him stacking attack, the additional supers. I think everything was just perfect. They could not have released this unit better, and I think if they're ever gonna drop a character because if you look at every most hype Part 1 unit in like since this unit dropped. Like it's this unit, it's LR cooler. Next year it's fusing Blue Goku Vegeta Vegito Blue. Next year it's base Broly into Super Saiyan. It's next year after that. What was it? It was oh my goodness, I can't think. Was it this previous past year? Yeah, it was Blue Goku and Vegeta. It's like this unit's competition since then in terms of how good, like how hype he was, like it for the impact that he had and how hype he actually like was compared to those units. It was like, wow, like they did a good job with this unit. They marketed him, they designed him well. Like I said, only complaint is I did not have LR Golden Frieza because he's just a random ass yellow coin LR, and it's like as a free to play unit, like you're not like you're saving your stones and this shit drops right before the War by Download celebration. Obviously, I'm not gonna drop all my stones for LR Golden Frieza, but maybe I would have dropped a few if I had known this guy was gonna be as fun as he was. But yeah, I think that's definitely it. I don't have obviously physical VB would be third on here, and then Int Gotenks would be after or rate right in between the Family Kamehameha and SSB. Oh no, he'd be right. I think he would be right after the Family Kamehameha and SSBKK. Yeah, he's around that range. This list is definitely a little bit flexible, but I think this is my opinion in terms of the tiers. I think these units. I'm very excited for the 8th anniversary LR EZAs because I think they could be equally as fun as the Family Kamehameha, but I think just that restriction on their standby, like it's that's what holds them back, and I think that's gonna be definitely very important when they EZA, and that's why I'm definitely not as hyped for their EZAs, but I'm still hoping, like if you see a lot of the units on here, they do like cooler stacks, Blue Fusion stack before transforming. I guess Diamond Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta doesn't stack. Gohan stacks attack before standbying. SSBKK and Evo, they don't stack. And then the 7th anniversary LRs, they stack. So stacking, can be a very fun mechanic if it's done well, but it can also be a very boring mechanic if they're afraid